So this is the Essential O free training. And this is different from an 8-week transformational course I teach called the O class. So when I reference that, you guys will know that that's different. I just want you to kind of be clear. But as I was saying, welcome, and do bear with me because this is the first time using this software in a screen, webcam kind of way. I've done slides before with this, but this is my first time talking to camera or mouthing to camera, as I apparently was there for a couple minutes. But I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm going to keep this pretty brief. I know it's lunch hour, and so I want to kind of get in, get out, and let you guys get back to work. So it'll be about 30, 40 minutes. You're going to have lots of time for question and answer at the end, and there will be a replay. So if you have to hop out, you're coming in late, or you just want to rewatch it and kind of take some notes and digest it a little better, you will be able to watch this again. So no worries about frantically scribbling or trying to, listen to it as you sneak into the store or work or whatever. So I'm really excited that you guys are here because I think this is an incredibly important topic. And as I mentioned in the emails, I think it's important for single women as well as for married women, probably more so, I would say, for married women. But if you're single, I want to just address that up front, right? Because I feel that this is an important thing to understand conceptually, even when you're not supposed to be having sex. Female orgasm is, it's something that, as you're going to find, as we discussed it this afternoon, that transcends a lot of other things that happen in our life, and that really puts a spotlight on what isn't working well. It's kind of like, I love to talk about our bodies, the theology of the body stewardship, and sex, because I feel like they are known pain points, like where people know, this is an issue in my life. But what they do is they reveal what's going on beneath the surface that we didn't really realize was happening. So we'll get into all that more later, but there's a lot going on here. And as a single woman, I feel that when you understand the concept of what your sexuality is supposed to look like, it gives you a security that I found this because I studied this when I was single, right? I wasn't having sex, and yet I was learning as much about sex as I possibly could because something told me that I didn't know what I needed to know in order to have the kind of marriage that I wanted to have. And that if I could figure it out or get at least a little closer beforehand, then maybe I would actually have an easier time finding a man, attracting a man, and stepping into marriage well and beautifully in a way that, I felt very empowered and safe and secure in what it was supposed to look like and what was going on and what my role was. So that's why I want you here. I'm not saying go off and, practice this. I just want you to be here to understand the concepts of why does orgasm matter? How has our society and culture kind of twisted the truth about it? And then how is it actually supposed to look, and why is it so important in a marriage and as part of my female identity? So that's for the single chicks. For the married ladies, we got a whole lot more to talk about, right? Because this is something that you are hopefully, in my idea, supposed to be practicing and hopefully experiencing. And if not, we're going to talk about what you can do about that too. But I want to welcome you guys, since I did this earlier, but you might not have heard me, apparently. So welcome to my bedroom. This is going to be kind of an intimate girl chat. There will be lots of time for you guys to ask questions. Feel free to go through and write them as you have them, or just say hi, whatever you want to do. Feel free to chat, and I'll try to see them, but I'll definitely dedicate time at the end to looking through any questions that you may have. And if you're watching the replay, there's a way to email me your questions, and I can address them that way too, okay? So let's dive into it. I was talking to my husband last night, and I said, I'm not really that into talking about people's sex lives with them. I mean, it doesn't really get me off, if you'll excuse the pun. It's just like, I don't really want to know all the details. And he's like, are you kidding? I thought that was what you lived for. That's why you do this. And I said, not really. I mean, I want to help people, and I have total comfort around it. I have no problem talking about it. And I look at it more scientifically and objectively, like, okay, what's going on? What's the design? And what's happening that's out of line with that design, which is leading it to not work? And then how can we get it back in line with the design so that it does work? That's what fascinates me. And that's how I like to help people. But I'm not like some weirdo who just really thinks this stuff is kind of fun and cool. I just feel it's so important. And what I've found is that not many people are talking about it. My husband and I have been kind of informally for a while, and now a little more formally these days, in marriage ministry. And even though we were, engaged and newlyweds at the time, we were at a very large established church where I had worked in ministry for several years. And we were on the marriage ministry team. And it was hilarious because it was like all these 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds, one 40-year-old couple, and us, and we're like the babies. And we actually even asked a couple times, like, why do you guys want us in here? Like, what do we have to offer? We feel we have strong, good things to offer, but do you guys see our value? And they were like, yes, because you're part of this new generation that sees marriage completely different, where there is a totally different definition of marriage that's culturally acceptable, where sex looks totally different, and where so much of relationships and communication and identity happens around the internet and happens around image and social media. Like, it's just a brand new world, and we don't know what we're doing there. And so we need people like you, people of your generation who kind of understand what's going on, to let us know, what are young people thinking? What are young single people thinking? Dating people thinking? Married couples thinking? Like, what's going on in your generation? How can we help? So we loved playing that role. But what we also found was that a lot of older married couples who, you would hope that you could kind of look to for mentoring and for an example of how it should be done, were not actually having the kind of health in their marriage that one would hope, right? And that one would wish for when you're 20, 30, 40 years in, or 50, sorry. So we were disheartened by that, and we tried to kind of study it. My husband kind of, has some interest in it, but I'm super passionate about it. And I really became fascinated and saddened and really intrigued by what's going wrong here, and what are the things that I can do as a young married woman, and at the time, even before I was married, single, to prepare for this, and what are the things that I can do kind of just in my community to help to solve some of these problems. And one of the biggest problems that kept coming up, whether it was officially acknowledged or whether it just became kind of obvious, like, oh, that's the issue, but nobody wants to talk about it, was sex. And the tension around the female body, and the women not liking their bodies, and maybe their husbands not being attracted to them, or what I'm finding more and more, women not feeling attracted to their husbands, the resentment toward their husbands creeping in, and a lot of dysfunction around the sexual act, just how frequently they were having sex, whether or not it was something that was enjoyed. Were there other things that were kind of coming into play? Was there a past affair? Was there a porn addiction? Was there, any kind of just misuse or abuse from the past that was now coming up in their marriage bed and making things hard? And so I didn't want to become like the sex girl, but I kind of did. And now I'm pretty known among my friends, and more so as I've been being bold and obedient, really, to talk about this as a coach for women who are struggling with this area. So there's all kinds of different ways that I could take this today, but I really do want to hone in on this concept of female orgasm, okay? And here's why. I didn't realize that that orgasm was so important, to be honest with you. I knew that sex was important, and here's why. Because we look at the Bible, right? And in Genesis, we have the first marriage. We have God creates Adam. He brings to him Eve. They are the first husband and wife. And he says, go forth and be fruitful. And I don't personally think he's just talking about, building houses and things. He's talking about have sex and have children and let's get this party started. And then we look at the other end of the Bible, and we have Christ and the church, the bride and the bridegroom, kind of in that culminating, beautiful, clean marriage where everything has come to fruition. Christ has come back. He's cleaned his people, and it's this beautiful wedding feast, right? So the Bible begins and ends with a marriage. And I don't think that means that marriage is this end all be all, the thing to achieve. Paul says singleness is actually better, right? But for those of us who are called to marriage, I think we have to look really seriously about the fact that this is a major metaphor for our relationship with God. And it's a huge part of the Bible story. And there's no way that we can say that this isn't that big of a deal. It's a huge deal. And so if we then kind of hone in a little bit more and say, okay, marriage is a big deal. Well, what is marriage? Well, sex is like the apex of marriage, in my opinion, because you can have dinner with someone else, right? You can have someone else cook your food, someone else clean your house, someone else, you can be getting money from a trust fund or something. You can have, other people raise your children. Two women can raise children together if they're nuns in an orphanage. Every other part that people would normally say is part of a marriage or part of a family can be done in a godly way, except having sex. And of course, when you get married, until you've had sex, the marriage isn't considered consummated, and it can actually be annulled without a divorce, right? So this act defines marriage, right? It's in a huge way. So very, very significant act. So I always kind of knew that, okay, this is a big deal. It's the apex of marriage, which is the primary metaphor for our relationship with God as believers. So something here is really critical. And if you just look out in the world today, the way that sex is being twisted and perverted and attacked, I mean, it must be important or Satan wouldn't be going after it so much, right? So I knew that was the case. But it didn't occur to me, funny enough, that orgasm is super important because it's the apex of sex, right? The goal of sex, one would hope, have children, be close, but the physical kind of the culmination is orgasm, right? So if sex is important, then the kind of defining ultimate moment that everyone hopes to get to of sex must be important. I don't think it's just an afterthought. But as I thought it through, and I've heard a wonderful quote. I was at a conference once, and this woman got on stage, and she was kind of this like long-haired, hippie-like older lady, and she didn't even introduce herself. She just walked across stage. It was a Christian conference called Q. It's kind of like the TED Talks of Christianity. And she just starts with this line, "What if heaven were one unending orgasm?" Right? What a mic drop moment. And the whole room goes silent. It's mostly men. And I'm sitting there like fist pumping. And my girlfriend is thinking like, just please don't embarrass me, Jackie. Just don't say anything. And I'm like wanting to scream because I feel like this woman got it. And of course, many other people have had this realization too. But think about that for a minute, right? Just think about what orgasm is supposed to be. And we're going to talk about female orgasm specifically in a minute. But just this moment of climax, right? Where everything has reached a crescendo point and suddenly you've checked out. Like mentally, physically, emotionally, you're on another planet. If you have pain in your body, it's been forgotten. And there are all these scientific studies that actually show that that's what happens, that the kind of pain awareness just vanishes during orgasm. If there's any kind of emotional distress, poof, right? Everything vanishes. Trouble vanishes. And I think that actually is a lot like being in the presence of God. It's this physical, spiritual, all my problems have melted away and I have just transcended into a place of peace and ecstasy and bliss. And I do think personally, that's what heaven's going to feel like. And I think that's why we're so obsessed here on earth with orgasm, because it's like the closest taste that we can get without being drug induced of feeling God's presence, of being in this transcendent state of bliss where you think, everything's okay. I'm somehow I've been pulled out of all my troubles and I'm okay. So I personally think that's why people are so obsessed with it. That's why they're chasing it so much. And yet here's the kicker, right? We hear all that. Sounds awesome. Sounds wonderful. Maybe it makes sense to you. Maybe you're on board. And yet we also hear culturally that the female orgasm is like this unicorn. It's like this elusive beast, which, you might find one day if you're really lucky and you're in the right place at the right time and you know the magic words. But it's very unreliable and you shouldn't expect it. It's probably not going to happen for you. Good luck. Try a couple different positions. I hope it works out. There's no sense of this is a wonderful, reliable, plannable, dependable experience for women. And so I think, and it's kind of been a new awareness, we've long had this cultural understanding of sex is for men and women have to be cute so that they can make men want them, so they can manipulate them using sex so that they can be safe and protected, right? Or some kind of cultural story that we've told for eons. And I'm thinking maybe this whole idea that the female orgasm is so elusive or impossible, or honestly, it's many times it's presented as unnecessary, like it would be nice, but sweetheart, you don't need to have it. It's all about him, really has perpetuated this idea that sex is for men because women probably aren't going to enjoy it that much anyway. So we go into sex thinking, I'm probably not really going to have a great time. I'll feel close, I'll feel attractive, I might feel a little bit titillated, but I'm probably not going to have this like transcendent explosion where I feel like I can take over the world and, all my problems are gone. And it's really just about making sure that his needs are met, right? Does that sound familiar? So many people tell me that it does. And I certainly have heard it all through the church that this is something for men. Sex is for men. It's what opens them up so that then they want to have deep conversations. And the deep conversations are for women, right? And so we're told like you have to have sex in order to be able to emotionally connect with your man. We're told to manipulate our husbands. It's it's disgusting to me. But anyway, so I think that this idea that female orgasm is unnecessary, elusive, hard to obtain has actually perpetuated a lot of unhealth in our marriages, a lot of unhealth in society and culture, right? Because if women don't expect to be sexually fulfilled, then they do start to look at sex as a tool, a resource, a way to get men to behave a certain way. And many women, understandably, I was one of them for a very long time, get very, very angry at that concept, and therefore angry at men, and maybe angry at marriage, and maybe even angry at sex, because it's now something that has to be done for him to make him happy. And it's not going to benefit us in any way except somehow making us feel affirmed and wanted and safe. But we're not actually going to enjoy the act itself. So there's this kind of cultural message, and I would love to hear from you guys if you feel that this is true. If you've seen this or if you've seen something different, there's no right or wrong answers, but it's what I've seen mostly, is that female orgasm is elusive. It's not something that you need. It's not something that you should expect. And sex is largely for men. So sweetheart, just do your wifely duty, and then he'll fall asleep and you can get up and go keep doing the dishes. And over time, your primary job is to not get bitter that he's going to have such a emphasis on sex and it's not really going to be something that you enjoy. I can't tell you how many women have told me things like that on the phone or an email or in coaching, where it's this kind of this anger that sex somehow isn't for them. And I could not disagree with that more. And I don't think it's what God's intention was. I don't think it's what God's intention was, okay? Now, I'm not going to go into in this training because it gets a little blunt, but if you want to know more about this, it's all inside the O class. Why anatomically women are so designed not just for orgasm to be easy, but for it to be quickly and easily replicable and dependable and multiple and simultaneous, and all of the ways our bodies are designed that not only makes orgasm for women not a difficult, I hope it happens kind of thing, but like a how could you miss it kind of thing. It's like missing the major buttons on the machine kind of thing. So I could not disagree more with that. But I just want you guys to see how the apex here of sex is more important than we've realized. The climax of this act, which is the defining act of this metaphor for our relationship with God, is so critical because it shows us what heaven is supposed to feel like. And to say that women aren't supposed to be able to taste heaven, this side of heaven, I think is completely off, inaccurate, unbiblical, not in line with God's design, and a total cultural lie. So my first message that I hope that you can receive and understand is that is a cultural story and not a biblical truth, okay? I don't believe that orgasm for women is an elusive thing. I don't believe it's an unnecessary thing, and I don't believe that it's and I hope it happens, but it's really not about you anyway, sweetheart, kind of thing. I think that's a narrative that has really harmed us and harmed the church and harmed marriages. And I think we're going to have to turn it around if we're going to try to turn around things like the porn addiction and the sex trade and this whole warped view of sex. I don't think it's the answer, don't get me wrong, in any way. These are massive, complex problems. But I think that, like many things, trying to solve a massive world problem often best begins at home, in our own hearts, in our own marriages, in our own bedrooms, and making sure that our house is a representation of what's holy and how it's supposed to be. And then when that's set, we go out and we help other people. Not saying you can't go help other people when your life is a mess, because life's always gonna be a mess. My life is most definitely a mess. I can promise you that. But there's something grounding and empowering about getting your own stuff sorted out and then going out and working on that issue in the world, okay? So I want to take a quick pause and see if you guys have any questions about that. Take a sip of tea. I've got my Christmas cup up. I'm just a little bit excited. But let me know if you guys agree with that, if that's something that you've seen, if that's something that has also angered you like it's angered me, or if you have any other questions about what I've said so far, and then we'll keep going. I also want you guys to feel free to chat as we go. and then I'll look at the questions and the answers afterward. And I also want you to know that there is a way, in fact, I think, if you look down at the bottom of the chat, it says to everybody, and there's a way that says send to admin. And so if you want to be anonymous with your questions or your comments, I believe that you can use that. If you see that, again, this is new software for me, to send something only to me. And then I can put that question out there anonymously as well. And of course, also, you can email me during this. You can email me afterward. I'm here, right? Tatiana says, I've definitely seen this in culture and how resentment builds in relationships. Yeah, isn't it interesting? And I've always seen that too. And I didn't ever really connect it to, and obviously there are many, many different pieces. This is not the solution, but it was something that I hadn't given as much due importance as I think it actually has. And that's orgasm. When women are continually, regularly experiencing orgasm and sex, and it therefore becomes something where sex is good for you, sex is good for him, and you come together as a couple, you both enjoy it, and you both move out from it feeling empowered rather than embittered or somehow used or violated even. Some of these words I've heard women use in their marriages, where you just think that's not how it's supposed to feel. And yet I get it. I mean, it's so easy for that to happen when we're not really embracing every corner of this design, because when we're having sex, right? Here we are talking about this on a Monday afternoon. But when we're having sex, it's like this very heightened emotional and spiritual, as well as physical, obviously, experience, right? Everything in our bodies, especially as women, is in a state of vulnerability. And now in the course, I talk about how I actually feel that women have more of a position of power where there are kind of coming back toward the man and not just receiving passively, but giving and kind of like taking the whole experience up a notch, which is how you actually can create some serious orgasms in lots of different ways for women. So I don't think it's just passive, but generally the sex act for us as women is an act of opening and receiving and being in a very, very vulnerable, scary, often weak and violatable feeling position, right? Literally and figuratively, right? Emotionally and physically. So for sex to feel violating within marriage actually happens very, very easy. Hey, Teresa. Yes, I know, right? I mean, the things that you want to tell people out there on the streets, like you just need to know God. But anyway, we digress. So it's not how it's supposed to feel in marriage for that kind of violation or that usedness. And guys, ladies, it's not even just because, the husband is a jerk or something like that. Oftentimes what women will tell me is, my husband is awesome. I mean, he loves me. He wants this to go well. And maybe he has his own issues on the side, whether it's personality traits or he's shy or he's uncomfortable with the topic of sex himself or whatever it may be. But he wants this to be a good experience for me too. And yet, I find myself crying at the end of sex, and maybe it's quietly when he's taking a shower and he doesn't know. And yet I leave feeling like I was somehow just used, and I don't even know how that happened or where it came from. It's like nothing went wrong. I just have this feeling in my heart. So there's so much here that can go wrong, even within marriage, because I feel the design is so specific. And I'm now very, very convinced that female orgasm is actually a critical part of that design. And it's not like it's going to solve every problem ever. So here's what I think it does, okay? It's not going to magically make your husband be kind to you. It's not going to magically help you lose 50 pounds. It's not going to magically, put money in your bank account. This is not a magic trick, but what it is it's an empowering moment where you now come to your husband and therefore sex and therefore your marriage. And in a major way, I feel your life and even your relationship with God as a woman, where you're no longer feeling like my job is to show up and do what I'm supposed to do, and we are supposed to serve other people, but it shouldn't result in us feeling so incredibly embittered and neglected and depressed and drained. And for one thing, you can't keep serving people if that's what it feels like, right? So for us to be able to instead have this act, even if it's messy, even if we don't really like how our bodies look, even if, we just had a disagreement with our husband earlier that day, even if the house is a wreck and the toddler is crying, with the nanny or whatever, which doesn't sound familiar to me at all. Don't know why I would think of that. Even then, to have this moment where we decide and we commit and we receive that we're going to embrace, prioritize, and experience God's design for us as women to have this ecstatic sexual pleasure. Then when we leave that moment, that whole sexual experience, like let's say the husband's passed out in his post-sex nap, and you put your clothes back on and you're about to go finish some chores or whatever it might be. And that's often how sex looks, right? It's not glamorous. You leave feeling powerful. You leave, and I mean, it's kind of funny, but sometimes this is what I'm thinking. You leave feeling like a lioness, who just took her prey. He's very contentedly napping, and you're about to go conquer the rest of the world. You're just this powerful, centered, grounded woman who's just received love from God, taken it in and said, yes, I am loved and I will receive that and I will enjoy this. She's done it within the design of the beautiful, holy marriage picture, right? Which is God's will for us. And now she's going and taking this whole radiant power. And I'm just talking about the spiritual and emotional side. I'm not talking about now the positive hormones that are coursing through her body, literally doing everything. I mean, I researched this a couple weeks ago and it was crazy. Like your skin's better, you have lower heart disease rates, you're going to live longer, your appetite's smaller, your mood's happier. It's just the benefits of orgasm are unbelievable to me. I had no idea until I looked into it, but it's not really surprising given everything that we've just said, right? So you leave this encounter feeling physically empowered, emotionally empowered. You connected with your husband and you received something from him and you gave something to him. And it was this mutually beautiful, enjoyed powerhouse encounter. And now you go out into the world like this warrior queen that you are, right? And that's how it feels rather than, well, I sure hope we don't have to do that again anytime soon because I just lost an hour. Now I'm sweaty. My makeup is smeared. I didn't even really enjoy it. I was just reminded of how much I don't like my belly or my thighs. He didn't really seem that into me. And I've got so much left to do, right? That's how sex can feel. And I mean, I've walked away from sex like that with my husband in the beginning before I knew what I was doing with orgasm and just felt like this sucks. This sucks. I don't want to do that again. How can I avoid that again? And then when you click with this, when you say, and it's not a matter of your husband, suddenly becoming this masterful lover, it's a matter of you taking responsibility to receive sex and orgasm as a gift from God to you, and your husband is this beautiful resource, if you will, who you get to share that with rather than having to hope that he gives you something like he received sex from God. And now you're hoping to eke out a little bit of that pleasure and closeness from your husband. You're both receiving sex and pleasure from God. And now you're sharing it in this ecstatic closeness. Okay. And that's what allows you to leave feeling like just this powerhouse, this blessed, empowered, loved by God, receiving and experiencing God's love, having that kind of healthy source of pleasure in your life. So then you don't turn to overeating junk food or to overspending on, the shoe website or whatever, or gossiping or comparing yourself on social media. You have this groundedness of my life is good. My body feels good. My marriage is good. Things are good. And I'm going to go out and keep making them good. And it's just this positive cycle that builds. And I find that that's exactly what regular female orgasm allows us to feel like. And then it's just this kind of creative cycle, right? Because when you have all these positive hormones and positive feelings, you just take that positivity and that empoweredness out into how you talk to your friends, how you deal with difficult conversations, how you go into work, how you manage your children, how you manage your home. And it's not going to be perfect, but you come from a place of, I'm really fulfilled and I'm very strong and I'm very able to receive and create and accomplish good things. Okay. So there's so much goodness. There's so much goodness that comes out of this. And I had not realized it, frankly. I had really thought that sex was kind of the thing and that's awesome. But now I see that prioritizing female orgasm is what keeps married sex healthy among many, 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 many other things. But without this, Usually the husband starts to disconnect because he doesn't feel like a successful lover, even though you're not depending on him or necessarily even using him that much for your female orgasm. But he still feels like she didn't really enjoy this. I must kind of suck, and it's this negative cycle for him. As we've discussed, it's this negative cycle for you. And then that tension and embitteredness is picked up by your children, is picked up by your girlfriends, is picked up by your community. It just isn't good. And we all turn to these other habits that hopefully will make us feel a little bit better, when that ecstatic sexual encounter is supposed to be one of those most pleasurable, powerful hits of, I feel good, life is good, I don't need a bunch of sugar, I don't need a bunch of crap in my house that I don't need. We are doing really well here. I don't need to go find another hit somewhere because I just got that healthy, holy, hot hit in my bedroom. Okay? So what do you guys think of that? Does that all make sense? Were you aware that female orgasm is like so good in so many emotional, relational, and physical areas? Because I was not. I mean, gosh, reading through the studies that I read through, it was just like, it was mind-boggling, from immunity being strengthened and migraines ending and, weight going down, carb cravings going down. And it's not because we were a good girl. And so I think that there's this huge mindset shift, as I just explained, where we feel like I can do this. I am a powerful woman. I am able to receive good things. I can create love for myself and share it with someone. I'm in this place of power. But beyond those kind of mindset shifts, just the physical hormone shifts that are coursing through your body. And this was why sex outside of marriage is something we so want to avoid, because people can say whatever they want about there being no emotional connection. These hormones are at max. Like oxytocin is one you guys may have heard of, the bonding or the love hormone. Max capacity, right? It's like turned up to the red range, if you want to, on the little, oxytocin odometer. Can we say that? And so there are other things in our lives that create that, even just hugging someone or maintaining eye contact. Giving birth is a huge hit. And breastfeeding is a huge hit. But sex, orgasm, simultaneous orgasm, it's like it starts to break down. It's so off the charts, right? Teresa says, I didn't know all that. Have definitely felt the lioness feeling, right? It's awesome when you leave, your cave, if you will, and you just feel like, hear me roar, I can do anything. I am, a powerful, sexual, holy woman of God. I am fully receiving this area of my life. And there is no husband out there who's going to complain about that, as many happy husbands can tell you. So I love that. I'm so glad, Teresa. And I didn't really have that term before. If you guys have seen that book by Lisa Bevere, Lioness Arising, I don't think this is what she's referring to. So don't look at that book and be like, she's talking about the lioness feeling. I don't think so. But it is a really, really good book. So anyway, just a great term for powerful women who are in the right, in God's design, stepping into that fully, and then, enjoying the benefits. Even though life is imperfect and messy and broken, there's still some really cool, awesome stuff that comes out of this. So I love it. Tatiana, I haven't experienced any of these empowering feelings, but instead have been left confused in the negative cycle like others. Okay, so Tatiana, I don't know if that means that you haven't been experiencing orgasm, or you have, and yet some of that mindset stuff is still coming up. What some women have told me is that even when they are able to reach a point of climax, there's so much shame around sex for them, and just kind of it's like they know that it's holy and it's good, and that pleasure is okay to receive, and that it's safe and God likes it and all these things. And yet there's like this nagging second layer of belief, right? So I call that our conscious theology. God loves me. I'm safe. I can trust God. And then down here is where we say, I don't really know if this is good. I feel dirty. I don't know that God likes me. I don't think I can trust God, right? All that's going on down here. And so even if we do reach, and I'm not sure what your situation is, and you certainly don't have to share if you're not comfortable, but whether or not we experience the physical ecstaticness, there's still that lower level mindset stuff where we might be able to check out for that 30, 60, hopefully 90 seconds, right? But afterward, there's that like, this like sick feeling of I just did something bad, or I wasn't supposed to do that, or, I don't feel safe right now, or somehow I do feel used, even though I technically enjoyed myself. And that's all that mindset stuff around not having received sex as a good thing at that lower level, where we know that we know that we know, and we experience that this is something God said is good, and we can trust it, and we can enjoy it, and we can relax into it. And so much comes into that, like past abuse, past misuse of sex, and shame and guilt and, fear, and just there's so much there. And that's something we cover a lot in the course, because there's so much there. Or if there's porn use, or there's been an affair or breach of trust, and there are so many things that play in our head and our heart and our minds, where it can be difficult to enjoy sex, and really not only just be able to revel in that orgasm if it happens afterward, but for many women, even just getting to that point, and that's something that we address a lot too, is this, it's a climax, which means that there was a climb, right? There was a crescendo. You don't just go from like, okay, we'll have sex, to suddenly you're screaming with joy. There's this build, and in that build is all of that mental play, right? Because everything, like I said, is on high. Emotions, thoughts, insecurities. It's like everything has been turned up, unless you've turned everything off, which many women do, because all of those things feel unsafe, or they don't like them, or for whatever reason, they have built up a resentment toward their husband, and they don't really want to emotionally connect with him. And so therefore they don't let themselves be turned on, or being turned on doesn't feel safe. So how are they going to reach this crescendo if they won't even let things heat up because of what's going on in their minds, right? Very understandable. And in the same way, if things are heating up and all of these insecurities, or maybe your husband has had past experiences, or you've had past experiences, and all these jealousies or shame or guilt comes up. And so this build of body and mind and spirit starts to be very tumultuous, right? And scary, and full of a lot of junk. And it can be the kind of thing that keeps us from being able to reach orgasm. And a lot of women I speak to kind of break down in that middle zone, where they basically just can't finish having sex with their husband. They burst into tears, they shut down, they start to just tune out, turn it off, fake it, and go through the motions. Lots of different things happen in that kind of zone there. So I hear you. It's a very, and that's saying that you still do experience orgasm. That's not even going through all of the stuff that we talked about before, where if you don't, it feels like, well, what's in it for me here other than just my husband being pleased? The negative cycle is vicious. And what's interesting to me is how many women come to me and they're newly married. I work with women who are, been married many years, and I work with women who have been married a couple months. And it's fascinating to me how fast this hits, right? Because in the church, so often we're told that marriage is the answer. If you get married, all of your problems will be solved. And all of us married people know that actually that might have been when all of my problems began, right? Not at all true. But there is this idea that marriage is going to be easy. Sex is going to be like obvious. It's just going to happen. And it's a lot messier, right? It's a lot messier. So many women come to me and there's already tension in their marriage. There's already resentment in their marriage at a couple weeks, a couple months, a year in. And you just think, but this is supposed to be the fun part, where you guys are young and you don't have kids running around, and, your bodies are still functioning. And this is when it's supposed to be best. And so I think that really speaks to how complex this is, because it doesn't take long for it to break down. Like, we're not pulling along a go-kart here, one of those little, like, we just had the pumpkin season here. And so I'm thinking of those like little red wagons that you pull, those massive pumpkins, and maybe any children that you have along. This is a Ferrari. And it's the kind of car where there isn't even a stick shift. You don't even know how to use the darn thing necessarily. Not because you don't kind of intuitively know the penis goes in the vagina, excuse me for being blunt, like the basics of the process, but because there is so much more to what's going on in your head, what's going on in your heart, what's happened in the past, what you're fearing will happen in the future, how you feel about your body, everything that he's thinking and has done and is doing and whatever, right? There's so many more pieces to this. So I hear you, Tatiana. And I think many, many, many women have been there. I certainly have been one of them. And it's not an uncommon thing. And it looks different for different women, right? It kind of different problems pop up in different ways. The scenarios and the specific situations are always a little bit different. But overall, the fact that it's not working is super common. So that all being said, what are your questions? I want to let you guys go. Gosh, we're already at 40 almost 45 minutes. This is insane. So I do want to wrap up and honor your time, but let's take a couple minutes. And if you guys have questions, again, as I said, feel free. You can use that little send only to admin. So only I'll see it and I can ask it anonymously. You can email me afterward. And I thought I had one more thing. Oh, yes, the replay. The replay will be coming out again. So you can rewatch this. If you missed part of it, you can hop back at certain points and you'll be able to really kind of digest it better. And I also want to bring up, see if I can figure out how to do this. Wish me luck. Here we are. A way for you guys to talk with me. Some of you guys may have seen this before. I try to offer it really, really openly because I think it's really helpful. And it's been amazing to talk with women one-on-one in a very private way and really have them share their stories with me. So some women choose to work with me further. I'll explain what the O class looks like a little bit in just a moment. But regardless of whether or not they do, I just love having these conversations with women. I think even just giving them kind of a 45 minutes to vent and feel safe and chat like what's really going on. Their husband doesn't need to know. It's completely in confidence. And really share, here's what's going on in my life with a sense of really being safe and trusted. So anyway, I'll push this out there. Hope that worked. If you guys can see that, let me know. If you can't, also let me know. It should be a picture that says, ooh, what does it say? It says, book your call now. Okay, there we are. I can't even remember what I wrote. So if you guys would like to do that, feel free to hop over there. It should open in a new tab, so it shouldn't take you away from this. And you can go pick a time in the next couple days to talk with me. But in the meantime, let's chat questions. I would love to know, or even just more thoughts from you. Is this something that you find is easy to talk to with your girlfriends about? Is this something that, if you have older daughters, you've even broached with them? Or does it feel like, I don't know what they're learning about sex or where, but we just haven't had that conversation or that many of them? Is this something that your mom talked to you about? I mean, it's just a fascinating topic for me, as far as the female culture around it, and particularly the church's female culture around it. I think it should be addressed much more and very differently, still in very discreet, classy ways, but with more availability for kind of help and good content. So anyway, I'm here for your questions. Take another sip of tea, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the O course. And again, remember, you can use that admin tab if you want to just send something to me. All right, so let me talk to you a little bit about the O class, which is very funny. Excuse me, slightly runny nose, recovering from a cold. The O class is not what I was planning to do a course on. I was planning to do, oh, yes, I know. Isn't this interesting, Teresa? Right? And it's like, you've been around the church for a while. So where is this stuff? I'll tell you this quick story and then I'll talk more about the O course. But when we were looking for premarital counselors, and my husband is 8 years older than I am, he's in the military. I was about to start grad school. We obviously were waiting for marriage, so we wanted to kind of speed things up a little bit. And we wanted to get married quickly. We wanted to get married before the end of the summer, before I went off and started school. So I was looking for premarital counselors at our church because we wanted to go through that process of really studying some curriculum with people, talking through any issues that would come up about our different backgrounds and personalities and all that kind of stuff. And the way I picked the couple that we chose, who we still adore and who still we reach out to and they mentor us so beautifully, is I was looking for a woman who was comfortable with sex and yet was completely godly and committed to the Bible and biblical living, but I wanted a woman who we could talk about that and she wasn't going to be like, awkward. We don't want to go there. That's not, we're not going to talk about that. I wanted a woman who was fine with it. And so the way I found, okay, I see your questions out, Jan, and I will get to it. Gotcha. The way I picked this woman and her husband, and they're both awesome, is one, they were already working at the church that I was at. So I had seen her in prayer. I had seen her speaking about God and her relationship with God and the Bible. And I knew that she was grounded and her husband would be there at, meetings with her, and they were rock solid in that way. But we were walking through church at some point, I was working there. And so we were always just kind of running around doing things. And somehow the fact that we wanted to go to the south of France for our honeymoon came up. And I was just talking about it with these two women, and one woman goes, well, you have to watch out for those topless beaches, be aware of the topless beaches. And I'm not saying topless beaches are okay. It's just that there was this clear, like, that's bad. Don't do that. And I thought, okay, you're probably not going to be comfortable talking about sex, although I don't necessarily disagree with you. And then this other woman just like threw her head back and laughed. And she wasn't condoning topless beaches. There was just this ease around sex and the female body and the male body and all of us being these goofy, broken animals that we are trying to figure things out. And I thought, she's comfortable with this. We can go there with her. And sure enough, when we picked them as our premarital counselors and they counseled us, sex was an easy issue to talk about because she was comfortable, her husband was comfortable, my husband and I were comfortable. And I feel that working through those things with them, because she was open, was so much easier and so much more helpful than if we'd had someone. And I've heard this from so many young women who come to me saying, they didn't even talk to us about this during premarital, like the act of marriage. We didn't even talk about it. So sad. So anyway, I digress. Okay, so I will talk more about the O course. Let's answer Tatiana's question real quick. With the elusiveness of orgasm, people have often, let me not have tongue twister here. People have often emphasized masturbation as the only possible solution. What are your thoughts about this? Well, I think it comes down to how you define masturbation, right? And I know that sounds like a little weird, but if we're talking about, you're alone in your room and it's something that's taking you away from your husband, then I have an issue with it, right? So everything to me is it in line with the Bible? And I don't think there's anything clear in the Bible about masturbation, which I think is one of the reasons why there's so much confusion about it, because there is no verse, right? But so to me, it's the bigger picture. Is it taking you toward your marriage and a healthy, happy, holy, tight, faithful marriage bed, or is it taking you away from it, right? So hanging out with yourself over here, I mean, if your husband is in the military and he's deployed or something, I don't think it's morally wrong. I don't. But ideally, it would be something that you share with your husband, right? So what I do teach in the course is the various different ways to achieve female orgasm. And there's like 3 or 4. And, the timings within sex, where to aim for it. And I do feel that external stimulation, like you taking care of yourself while he's there, even showing him what to do, is perfectly fine. I think that one of the problems, I think you're right, with female orgasm being so elusive is that women are trying to only trying to have internal orgasms through vaginal intercourse with no external stimulation. And when you've got all the mindset stuff and your body's kind of cold because of all the tension maybe around sex and you don't even like the way you look, I do think you need to turn yourself on using perhaps some external stimulation, particularly in the beginning, if orgasm isn't an easy thing, to get your whole body thinking like, oh, okay, this is time. So that's something I talk a lot about in the course, really the female anatomy, which God designed, and that there are certain pieces that are only clearly for female sexual pleasure. Like there's no other reason. They have no other function. And Satan didn't put them there. He didn't add anything to the body. So this is God's intention for us, in my opinion. But the whole point of it, in my mind, is this doing something that's building your marriage, where it's making your husband feel like a better lover, making you feel more satisfied during sex with him, turning your body on so then he can please you and you can enjoy it, like the whole thing getting better? Or is it something that's leading you away from each other? That would be my thoughts on that. But really, really important question, and one I'm asked all the time. Okay, so Teresa, let's go over the O class real quick. Again, as I was saying, it's not something that I expected to teach. I was really thinking about a broader, helping kind of thing around sex in general. But this came up as the issue for a lot of women. And so naturally what's happened is as I'm teaching this, the broader issues around sex are coming in, because orgasm is part of sex. And so anything that happens with sex is going to happen with orgasm. So we're starting with orgasm, and it's kind of getting into all of those more relational areas, relationship with God areas. Are you feeling safe losing control? Are you able to give yourself permission? What kind of baggage from the past or around your body is coming up? What else is happening in your marriage? That's all coming up. So anyway, this course is an 8-week video training course. And in fact, I film it in my bedroom, so it's going to look a lot like this. And I am doing very, very open, very blunt. This maybe has felt like a blunt training, but this is actually quite euphemistic compared to how blunt I'm being inside that course. Still very classy, very technical, medical, nothing tacky, but very open around what are we really dealing with here? Like, what are the pieces of this puzzle, literally and figuratively, and how do they fit together? So looking at why is orgasm holy, female orgasm holy? Why is it unavoidably, in my opinion, God's will for us, and therefore we can trust it? And then we look at all the benefits, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, in every way, to you and your husband and your marriage. And then we move into really allowing yourself to feel physical pleasure. How can you give yourself permission? And a lot of women struggle with that kind of self-permission around physical pleasure. And I think it's because we have often associated pleasure and giving ourselves permission with somehow being unholy. And sure enough, it can take us off that way. We can give ourselves permission to leave our husbands, or to have an affair, or to overeat a whole lot of junk food, right? But how do we really come to a place of holy and biblical, pure permission? And then how do we bring that into our bodies, bring that into our marriage bed, and really allow ourselves to have ecstatic pleasure from a place of knowing that this is a good thing, okay? And then another huge issue that women have around orgasm, if it's not allowing themselves to feel that pleasure that can get so intense it feels almost too much, is losing control. Because that's what happens right before orgasm, right? Is we everything has to be released. If we're trying to hold on and control our body's reactions and our thoughts, we're probably not going to have an orgasm. So instead, how do we train ourselves, especially if we've been taught to be good little girls, or even if we've been in an abusive situation and control felt like safety, how do you allow yourself to lose control and just let it all fly and enjoy yourself in this design, okay? And then we get into technically, how do we actually have an orgasm? That's kind of what I was just talking about. What do you actually need to do to your body, in your body, with your body? Show your husband how to do it, to get yourself to that point where this not only happens, but it happens regularly, predictably, or as I like to say, every single time, non-negotiable. Well, we aren't done. We aren't leaving the room until this has happened. And then how do you plan it? How do you plan it into your calendar based on whether or not you're a mom or you're working or whatever might be happening? And how do you plan it within the actual act of sex? When should you try to have an orgasm based on your goals and based on what has been maybe slightly more difficult for you? And then we look at all of the other difficult factors that might come in and make this a problem, right? So outside porn use, affairs, past sexual experiences that are leading to shame or to jealousy, body insecurities, your husband maybe not being comfortable with sex. How do you hack all of that? And then the health issues. Are there medications which are making this difficult? Are there various other kind of body ailments that are making sex logistically painful or difficult? What do you do with all of that? And then how do you get over all of those mindset hangups around sex being a bad thing, or someone misused you or abused you? How do you move past all that and not let that be tainting your marriage bed now? And then finally, how do you step into this very powerful sexual woman in a godly way? And how does that kind of radiate out into all the other areas of your life? What does it look like practically? So that's what we do. It's 8 weeks, and I have a monthly group coaching call where women come together in a very safe, password protected, highly exclusive environment and ask me their questions either anonymously or openly. It's a group of women where they're all in this space. There's no one here just kind of hanging out for the fun of it. Everyone wants to intentionally improve this area of their life, and it's very sacred for all of us. And so it is a very safe and sacred and protected feeling space. And I work really, really hard to keep it that way, because I think that's essential to us being open enough to be able to actually address the issues that are causing the problems. And then there's weekly homework, because my goal is to help women really see a transformation. And I know all too well that it's super easy to buy something and have the best intentions to follow through with it. And we're going to get to it. And maybe next year or next month or, after this deadline's passed. So in order to hold women accountable, and I'm talking to myself here. I designed this out of an understanding of how I certainly behave too. I have weekly assignments. They're reflection sheets, and you turn them into me. If you don't want to, of course, there's the option not to. And instead I have a separate, just kind of a weekly reflection form where it's what was difficult, what was easy, and we really dive into what came up for you that week. But you don't have to share any thoughts with me that you don't want to. I'm just setting in place 2 different structures that you can either use both or choose from to keep you moving with a sense of, I need to keep coming back to this, right? Because if we don't keep coming back to this, nothing's going to change. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And so my hope is to help keep women moving through those stages of change that we're working through so they actually see a very different experience and reality for themselves in this area. So if you have questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. Or you can also book a time to talk to me and we can go into more depth about your specific, issues and area and what's going on for you, and even see if it's the right fit, because I have some other ways that I help women. Maybe orgasm isn't your thing, although if you're here, I'm guessing that it's at least an area of interest. And so would be happy to talk about what that looks like. And it is certainly going to be one of my main ways of helping women going forward. So if you have more questions, please go ahead and post them. I'll drink a little bit more tea and then I'm going to let you go, because I'm seeing that we're almost in an hour here, which is mind-boggling, but I guess I do enjoy talking about this and I think it's important. So please feel free to write some more questions. And again, you can always email me afterward and watch that replay. I know it takes some time to type, so I'll give you guys a couple minutes. My pleasure, Tatiana. Absolutely my pleasure. It is so much fun to hang out with you guys. So my delight. Thank you for being here, right? On a Monday afternoon. Thanks for deciding that this is a priority and coming out, showing up and making it happen. All right, we're coming up on 60 minutes here. I feel like I'm on a TV show, 60 Minutes with Jackie Dixon talking about orgasm. I don't think they're going to want me on mainstream TV, and I don't want to be there talking about this, so perfectly fine. So I'll let you guys go, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Again, please feel free to email me questions. Please feel free to book a time to talk to me. I'm so glad, Teresa. I agree. It feels so good to talk about this in a classy, elegant, godly way, right? But it really does. It's like, I don't want to say it's like popping a zit, but that's kind of like what it feels like. It has to be said. It has to be let out in order for healing to take place and for us to move forward, right? So enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to be sending out an email. This Thursday is my birthday, and so I'll be putting out something about planning for Christmas, the new re-release of my book as a hard copy. All kinds of exciting things are coming. So stay tuned. And again, if you want to hear more about the O Class, see if it's the right fit for you, feel free to either shoot me an email or book a time to talk to me on the phone. I would love to spend time talking to you and just give you a safe space to figure out what's going on in your world in this area. So much love to you, ladies. I have more respect and just deep adoration for you than you know. You're just absolutely phenomenal. Whatever is going on in your world, you are rocking it and you're going to be just fine. So hang in there and let's talk again soon and have a beautiful afternoon. Bye-bye.